Okay, good morning, everyone. This time, we will be talking about factoring perfect square trinomials. Okay, now this factoring method has something to do with the previous discussion. The topic was the special product, which is the square of a binomial. Now, if you square of a binomial, it will technically result to a perfect square trinomial. And what if you are asked the other way around? What if you are asked to factor the perfect square trinomial? Then the result is a square of a binomial. Okay, now what are the things that you need to do today? The same thing, you will be using your class notebook and please answer the specific parts of the practice and application only, okay? Class, do not answer everything. I observed there are students who answered those things found, everything in the practice and application. Though I attached the specific page there, but you don't need to answer everything. But it's good to have that for practice. But the only thing that you will pass are those specific numbers, okay? Please read the instructions carefully, okay? Sige, let's start. Now, for our learning objectives, we only have two. I want you to recall the special product, which is a square of a binomial, and factor completely perfect square trinomials. Okay, now factoring perfect square trinomials, this is the general form of our perfect square trinomials given the variables x and y. So take a look at this one. The first term is a perfect square as well as the last term. So that's the condition. Now, after that one, let's verify the middle term. If you get the square root of x squared, which is x, and the square root of y squared, which is y, multiply x times y, and multiply it again by 2, and that's our middle term. So we could say that this is a perfect square trinomial. Okay, again, this is our result. Simple as this one. You enclose this one, x plus y, and then you square it. How did you get that? Get the square root of x squared, put it here, copy the sign of the middle term. Okay, since our middle term is positive, then our resulting factor is also positive. Then get the square root of y squared and write it here. How do you check the middle term? Multiply the 2x times y, multiply it again by 2 all the time. So, this is correct. Now, for our negative, teacher, what if the middle term is negative? Now, technically, the first term and the last term in the perfect square trinomial are positive, so you have to verify the middle term. If the sign of the middle term is positive, follow that sign. If the sign of the middle term is negative, then you make use of this one, okay? So, these are the form of perfect square, trinomial, and factored form, okay? So basically, this will be your answer and this one. Okay, now let's try to find out among the polynomials, which are the perfect square trinomials. How to find out? It's very important to find that first before you solve anything. Now, let's verify the first one. Now, let's check the first term. It should be a perfect square. Okay, since the variable exponent is even, this is a perfect square. Now, let's check. Is 64 a perfect square? Okay, this is a perfect square. Now, after that one, how to verify? It's not the basis, the two perfect squares. You have to check the middle term. Get the square root of x squared, that is x. Get the square root of 64, that is 8. 8 times x, 8x. Multiply it by 2. It's 16x. So, we are certain that this is a perfect square trinomial. Okay, let's have another example. How about this example? Okay, let's verify. 9x squared. 9 is a perfect square. X squared is also a perfect square. Check. 25 is also a perfect square. Now, this time, let's verify our middle term. Again, our middle term could be a negative or a positive. Okay, let's verify. 3x times 5, that is 15x. Multiply it by 2. Okay, it results to 30x. So, this is still a perfect square trinomial. Okay, let's have another example. How about this one? Let's check. X squared is a perfect square, but 6 is not a perfect square. So you don't need to check the middle term if that's the case. So this is not a perfect square trinomial. Okay, last example. Let's have this one. Okay, the first term is a perfect square. The second is also a perfect square, 9. Now let's get their square root. The square root is x. Okay, the square root is 3. 3 times x, 3x, multiply it by 2. Is it 5? It's 6. So meaning to say, it does not satisfy the given condition. This is not a perfect square trinomial. Okay. I hope you were able to identify perfect square trinomial and not a perfect square trinomial. Okay. So, let's have our example. Let's start with the positive signed expression. Okay, now let's factor each completely. Now, baka malito kayo for the word completely. Sometimes it's used actually to factor the polynomial having more than one solution. But it's a general instruction, so do not be confused about this one, okay? Okay, now let's have our first step. Now, I want you to prepare this one. Okay, now let's get the square root of x squared. That is x, put it here. And then let's get the square root of the last term. Okay, put it here. Now, how are you going to verify if your answer is really correct? Baka prime to siya, non-factorable. How sure are you? Okay, let's verify. Multiply x and 2. That's 2x. 2x times 2. Okay, that is 4x. So meaning to say, this is a perfect square trinomial and our answer is correct. Okay, let's have the second example. Now, this time, let's prepare this one. Okay, why is it positive? Because everything here are positive. Then copy the sign of our middle term. Okay, let's get the square root of x squared. That's basically x. The square root of 9 is 3. Simple as that. Now, what's the meaning of this one? You enclose x plus 3 and then you square it. Meaning to say you are going to multiply x plus 3 by itself twice. So if you can forget the square of a binomial, you can always resort to the FOIL method. Okay, let's multiply x and 3. That is 3x. Multiply it by 2. That is 6x. So our answer is correct. Now let's have our third example. Okay, now let's check. Perfect square. This is also perfect square. Then let's prepare this one. Now get the square root of 25. What's the answer? Okay, that's 5. Take note of that. The square root of x squared again is also x. Okay, let's copy. That's 5x. Now, let's go to the square root. Let's get the square root of the last term. Excuse me. What's the square root of 16? That is 4. Now, are we certain that this given is a perfect square? Always check. Class, lahat naman to siya perfect square because our topic here is perfect square trinomials. Now, I intentionally presented perfect square trinomials. What if lang in the future, if you have a quiz, you need to verify it on your own. So let's check. 5x times 4, that's 20x. Multiply it by 2, that's 40x. Okay, so our answer is correct. Now, we're done talking about positive expression. What if we will use of the second formula? Now, there's a bit difference. It's only the sign of our middle term. Again, if the middle term is negative, automatically the factored form is in negative form. Okay? The sign in between is negative. Okay, always remember that one. Now, let's factor the given completely. Okay, we have 9a squared minus 24a plus 16. Okay, let's find out. Okay, so prepare this negative sign. Okay, let's factor 9a squared. What's the square root of, let's get the square root rather. What's the square root of 9? That's basically 3. Okay, the square root of a squared is a. Okay, that's 3a. Now let's go here in the last term. Get the square root of 16. That would give you 4. Okay, let's always check the middle term again. I always remind you this one. 3a times 4. Okay, that's 12. Negative 12. Negative 12 times 2. Negative 12a times 2. That will give you negative 24a. So basically, this is correct. Okay, we are about to finish our discussion. Let's have the second one. Okay. Now let's check. Let's get the square root of x squared. That is x. Now this is more than 100. What do you think is the square root of 121? Now if that's the case, you are not allowed to use calculator. Then you make use of the trial and error method. And it's not 10 because 10 times 10 is 100. So the square root of this one is just 11. Now what's the sign of our middle term? Negative. Okay. Let's verify our middle term now. X times negative 11, that's negative 11x times 2, negative 22x. So, this is still correct. Okay, let's have our final example. Okay, now this is quite complicated, but let's still apply our knowledge about factoring perfect square trinomials. Okay, let's factor 25a squared. The square factor. Let's get the square root of 25a squared. The square root of 25 is just 5. And the square root of a squared is a. Place it here. Okay, copy the sign of the middle term, which is negative. And then let's get the square root of 49. And that is 7. Square root of b squared is b. So this is 7b. Then you enclose it. Okay, our final answer is just quantity of 5a minus 7b squared. Okay, now how are you going to check again? Let's multiply the terms. 5a times negative 7b. That is negative 35ab. Negative 35ab times 2. Negative 35 times 2. That is negative 70. Copy AB. So, our answer is correct. Okay, that's good. Now, this is the last example. Now, I would just like to remind you, there are cases wherein you really have to factor the given polynomial completely. Now, even if it's the instruction, it's already completely factored. What if you are asked to have the common monomial factoring first? Before you do the sum and difference of two cubes. What if you are asked to get the common monomial factor first before you get the difference of two squares? And what if, while solving for the sum or difference of two cubes, pwede pa pala siya maging difference of two squares? So you just have to apply. Sometimes there is a problem having two or more factoring method. So you really have to distinguish. Practice lang yan siya. Pero for now, I'll just give you basic lang muna, basic examples wherein only one method will be applied. Okay? Don't worry about that. So if you have concerns, you can message me and clarify things. I might be teaching you personally. Okay? So good luck everyone, and don't forget to answer your exercise and please update your work. This is already the fourth activity in the to be passed in the class notebook. Thank you. Goodbye.